This is the start of the dog project, and this is a really, really cute one. You're actually getting all of your pieces printed for you, and there are letters on there indicating which parts you need to match up. So to start off, we're going to look at things like the legs and the ears and the tail, because these are all done the same way. It's two pieces you're going to put back to back and then stitch around them to sew them together. Now, something you might find really, really helpful for this, especially if you're sewing this on a machine, because this could be hand or machine sewn, whichever's easier for you, is on this one here, I've actually just transferred that line, which is your seam allowance on the front there, onto the back of the fabric, and that's really helpful if you are doing them on the machine, because you've got a line to follow. And I've just done that with a heat erasable pen, but because it's going to be on the inside, you could just do that with a normal pen. Once you've been round there, you're going to need to put a snip into that point there where the toe is, so where it meets the foot there, and then you can take off any excess that you want to. You don't have to, but you can take some of that excess seam allowance off if you want to. We've actually done this project with quite a generous kind of 1 centimetre seam allowance, just because it's a little bit easier, especially when you come to those internal cuts. So you're going to turn that one inside out, and the ears, you're going to do exactly the same. You're going to go around the edge, leave it, flip it inside out, and then your ears are good to go. Your tail, yeah, same again. You're going to sew all the way around. You might need to just trim a little bit off at the top of the tail there to just take out some of that bulk, and then that one goes inside out. Now the body parts, you're going to take the large body part and that smaller body part, put those face to face and do both sides of those first, and then we'll come to put it together later. So I'm going to go ahead, turn these right side out, and get them ready for the next stage. So the legs are all done and they're turned right side out. To finish these off, you're actually going to stuff these. I'll press them first though, and then just turn in those edges, those seam allowance edges, and then just do a ladder stitch to sew these off. These parts will become clear a little bit later, because we're going to ladder stitch those onto the body as well. We do have another video for the ladder stitch, but I will show you a little bit later on in this video how to do that. Your ears are all done and they're turned right side out as well. I would leave those flat. I wouldn't actually put any stuffing in these ones, but again, could do with a nice press. You've got the purple side, which could be the inside of the ear, and the printed side, which could be the outside of the ear. Then we've got the tail, which I've already done there and turned right side out as well. This we are going to attach to the body. So how do we do the body? First step is we sewed all the way around. Now, at that point, I should have told you, actually leave a gap there between, you can see there's a letter K on here, and there's a letter, I think K and H is on this one. Let me just have a check. Yes, K and H. So you're going to leave that gap open, because that's where the foot pad's going to go, and you're going to do that on both sides. So I shouldn't have done that. I was naughty. I will unpick that, and then I'll be able to sew my foot pad in, which we'll show you in a second. But the next step is these two pieces here. So we want to sew these two pieces together. So we need to switch them over so that they are right side together. There you go, get those lined up. And then you're going to do that long edge all the way down here, right to the bottom. Once that's sewn in place, you are going to then do this long piece on the back edge. So I put 2 marks on here. Let me just flatten this back out so you can see a bit more clearly. So I've put a couple of marks on here, because when you sew this section, you actually need to sew from the top to here, stop, leave a gap, because you're going to need that for stuffing later, and then sew from here all the way around to the bottom. But before you actually sew that bit, you need to add the tail in. So you can see T1 and T2 here. That will match up with T1 and T2 on your tail. You just need to remember to have the tail pointing inwards when you sew it, because obviously you need that to be on the outside when you turn it right side out. So continue to sew down here. I would go back and forth over that section where you've got the tail in, so it's nice and strong, and then come all the way down the bottom. Just finished on the machine, and I've stitched up those pieces that I've just mentioned. So you can see that's the body starting to take shape. Now I also unpicked those bits that I shouldn't have sewn together, and this is where you're going to add those feet pads. So you've got one that'll say H to K, and you want to line that one up and stitch it into there, and then you've got one that says J to L, and that's the one that you want to get into there. And you want the pointing side facing towards the front of the feet for that. So I would recommend hand stitching these in. However, if you're brave enough, you can go for it on a machine. But I would pin the front and the back to get everything lined up, and then put a load of pins around the edge, and then you'll just be able to hand stitch those in, and that will almost complete the body with the feet in there. So the next step for the body is to attach the legs. Now, you've got a couple of choices as to how you can do this. You can finish everything, stuff it, turn it right side out, and then attach them. Or some people do find it a little bit easier to attach it while it's still not got the stuffing in. So I'm just going to quickly show you that option. There's his little tail. I'll not turn those legs out just yet because we're only interested in these parts here. So what you'll see is they've got that same shape on that's on the legs there. So what you want to do is line those up. So that's my front legs that would come down here. So my legs will go onto there, and you can either stitch them on while there's no stuffing in. So you can see that's the same shape lining up there and there. So you can either stitch them on while you've got no stuffing in, or you can have the stuffing in and then just ladder stitch them on. It's entirely up to you which method you find easier. Now, I've mentioned ladder stitch a couple of times, and I'm going to quickly show you what a ladder stitch is. So a ladder stitch, we're going to start it off by just taking the needle into that seam allowance and bringing it out just there. Let me just... So taking it into the seam allowance and brought it out just there. And then what I'm going to do is take a stitch from within that first seam allowance, and then move across and put a stitch into the seam allowance on the opposite side. And where I'm putting my needle on here is the same point. Can you see, if I just tilt it a little bit there, where it came out here is where it goes in on the opposite side. And you just do that, working your way all the way up, going from side to side. So in and out on this side. Just trying to get into that. There we go, into that seam allowance line. And then lining it up on the other side, in and out again. And you're going to do that all of the way up. You don't want too small a stitch because it's going to take you ages. And as you pull them together, you can see those little stitches starting to disappear. So that's a ladder stitch, and you'll continue going back and forth. It's called a ladder stitch because when you open it back out, you can see it's almost like rungs of a ladder that you can see. So that's how to finish those off, and then you can either, as I said, attach them before or after they're stuffed. It's up to you. The next step is to start on the head. So the first step for the head pieces, there are two side pieces to the head, and then we've got two additional pieces. Now this is the piece that forms kind of the gusset that goes all the way from the nose all the way over the top. Let me just see if I can get a bit more of this in. So your first step is to sew this part together here to create one long strip. I'll jump across the sewing machine, I'll get that done, and then I'll be back with you. I'm going to start at the nose piece here, and we're going to take these one at a time, because you can see as I've lined them up there, this is how they go together. So the point from the nose all the way down to the chin here, that's going to line up with this side here. Now you have got letters on, you can see the letter U there and the letter U there, so they'll give you an indication of how it goes together. So we're going to go from here down to the bottom, and then we'll start again from the nose and come up and over the top. Once that side's sewn on, we'll do the same for the other side. Now I personally find this a little bit easier to hand stitch, but you can machine stitch this if you wish. The only other bit you need to remember, and I would actually put these in before you start sewing it together, is to add your ears in. So the ears also have letters on, so you know which one goes on which side. So this is M and N, so this is this side, and it says M at the bottom, so it goes in like so. And this is because they're going to fold over. So once you've sewn it in, it's actually going to kind of fold back on itself, and it's going to form a floppy ear. So what I would do is, first of all, cut that as it says. So we'll just grab the scissors and snip down there. We're going to fold this in half. We're going to pop that ear into place, making sure you check the letters so it goes in the right way. Just before I go ahead and sew these in, I just wanted to show you with the ears in this position. Now, I did explain there are letters on there to show you which way to line them up, but obviously you can still flip it round. So what you're looking for is you're looking for your nose facing that way, and with the ear flapped up, you want to be able to see that purple side, because when they're in place and they're finished, they'll be flapped over so you can see the patterned side. So that's what you're looking for with your ears. And now the next step is to add that middle piece into the head. I'm sewing the head together, and I've just stopped halfway through just to show you a couple of things. So first of all is the ear. When you've got the ear in, you've got to make sure that you tuck that in as you sew past it, because obviously you don't want the half the ear sticking on what will be the inside of the head. And then secondarily, the central panel that goes all the way around, it's got these little kind of blue marks on. Now they are there to help you know where to put your snips to allow this panel to move, because obviously this panel's got to go in several different directions, and you can see here as I work my way around, I've got a few of those little snips in already. I can put more in to loosen it up later, but that will help that panel to create that shape. So you can see that's one side on. I've got to go ahead and sew that second side on, and then we're ready to finish construction on the dog. The headpiece is finished, and all that's left to do on this is add the eyes. There's 2 points marked on there for the eyes. Now, we do supply the kit with 2 black plastic safety eyes, but if you want to swap them out for something else, then you are more than welcome to, or even just stitch them on with a bit of embroidery floss. So, next step is to attach the head to the body. So I want the head, as it's there, right side out, and turn it upside down, and just make sure that the front of the head is facing the front of the toes on here. Now at this point, if you want to change the angle of the head, you can kind of put it in a slightly different angle if you wish, but we're going to put the whole thing inside the body, and you can use that slit at the back if you need to, just to help you get your hand in and position everything. So we're gonna, now we've got it all in there, I'm just gonna swivel it round so that little join is at the front, and then line up the inside with, there you go, so line up that together and get it lined up so it's right at the top. Now it looks as if this top bit, this round the top here, that there's a lot less fabric around the body opening than the head opening, and this is because the body opening kind of goes in like that, but the head opening goes out like that. When you actually stitch it on the line, you'll find everything matches up perfectly, so don't worry too much about that. And if you need to snip a few stitches down to get it to fit, then that's absolutely fine. So this is my last step, so I'm lining those lines up and stitching all of the way around the top of there to get the head onto the body. You can see there when I open that up, it actually fits quite nicely. So get that stitched on, we'll get the whole thing turned right side out and get the dog stuffed, and then either finished. We're nearly there, he's taking shape now. There's a couple more things that you need to do that I need to show you just at this point before we show you the finished one. So, your ears, when you've put them in, they actually need to be bent over so that they sit like that. So when you've got this all together, what you're going to need to do is take it over to the iron and just press those in place like that so they fold over. I mean, you can keep them up and you can press them that way if you wish. If you want sticky up ears, it's entirely up to you. And then the other thing that you need to remember is when you turn it right side out, can you see the difference between these two arms? How this one's all puckered and then this one's sitting much flatter. That's because the little bits between the arms, you need to put the snips in there just to allow that to move. So I'm going to take some of the stuffing out, fix that, add his legs on, and we're ready to go.